Hello, and welcome to this episode of Security Square, our cybersecurity focused series featuring analyst insights, expert guests, and the latest news and happenings across the security sector. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, principal analyst here at Kramer&Co Research. And I am joined today by my friend and frequent co-host, Jo Peterson, fellow analyst, brilliant engineer, member of the Cube Collective community of independent analysts, and all around brilliant person. Hi, Jo. It's always great to see you.
Hi, Shelly. That was a nice, very nice intro.
Well, you're California. So our conversation today centers on cybersecurity for financial services organizations. And specifically, we're going to take a look at security as it relates to credit unions. Our guest today is wildly impressive. Her name is Stephanie Southard. She's the VP and CSO of BCU, also known as Baxter Credit Union, a state-chartered, federally insured credit union headquartered in the Chicago suburbs. But Stephanie's accolades, seriously, do not stop there. This woman is amazing. She has over 25 years of experience in IT and security, deep expertise in physical and logical governance and risk management and acquisitions and incident response. She's worked in a variety of different sectors, including government, education, nonprofit, and the financial sector. She's an advisory board member for a number of organizations. She's received more awards and recognition for her accomplishments, honestly, than I can count. She travels all over the world speaking on a variety of topics. And that Stephanie, she is the real deal. Welcome. It's so good to have you.
Thank you, Shelly. I want to know if you're available to go everywhere with me, like
absolutely
to the grocery store.
Absolutely, girl. You just put me in your pocket.
Please, yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we are thrilled to have you. And this is a conversation Jo and I have both been looking forward to. So to set the stage here a little bit, credit unions are incredibly popular. They serve about 139 million Americans. I'm a member of a credit union. Chances are good that you're a member of a credit union as well. From a cybersecurity standpoint, we know that financial institutions and healthcare are two of the top targeted verticals for cyber threat actors. And what we wanted to explore today is whether those same risks that exist for banks and financial institutions and healthcare entities are kind of extrapolate across to credit unions. And we also wanted to explore whether credit unions have the same or similar security regulations as their banking cousins. I believe, and I would guess that the two of you will agree with me, that along with banks and financial institutions, credit unions are not only critical infrastructure, they provide a tasty target for cyber threat actors. For example, last year's third-party core service provider ransomware disruption affected 60 small credit unions. The reality of it is, to my way of thinking, when you're talking about any kind of financial institution, credit unions included, what they have is lots of personally identifiable information on their customers. And that's what makes them a tasty treat. And I think there's some other things that make them attractive to cyber threat actors, and we're going to dive into that. So, Stephanie, let's start this conversation with an easy one. Do credit unions have the same security risks that other banks and financial institutions do? Or am I crazy?
You're not crazy. And yes, they do. It's very similar to what the FDIC, maybe the Federal Reserve Board, and even the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency looks like. We do have annual audits, just like most other financial institutions, and they really do a deep dive into our security posture, our risks, our resiliency, and can we really handle if incidents come up? And how quickly does it take us to bounce back and serve our members quickly? So our regulators are the NCUA, which is the National Credit Union Association or agency. And we also deal with state charters. So depending on where you are a credit union, you also have to comply with those state regulations. They both follow the FFIEC guidelines, same as the FDIC. And they're also doing the same as just what we talked about. They're measuring what our posture and our security practices. They're looking at those risks, those security awareness, and really how are we engaging across the organization to not only protect the members' data, but also our company information. As you said, we store a lot of information about financial needs, wants, and also transactions. So how do we make sure those aren't getting into the right hands is really where, a lot of our regulatories focus. But we also know how have state privacy policies, right? And where we do business, we also have to comply with those. And that's what's been really hard for not only other financial institutions, but credit unions to follow, because most credit unions have smaller security teams.
Right.
So we really have to rely on our legal and our other third-party partners to help us meet all of those different privacy regulations.
That makes perfect sense. One of the things that we wanted to talk about, I think it was June of this year, that the chairman of the National Credit Union Administration asked Congress to restore the NCUA's vendor authority over third-party service providers and keeping parity with banks. And he cited a regulatory blind spot that's already had a negative impact on the industry. How would you see this change helping with mitigating security risks for credit union CISOs?
Yeah, we were all cheering in the background when he did that. So
Sure.
he definitely had our support. This authority would allow us to examine and enforce regulations on these vendors. Some things that our hands feel tied right now, we're able to ensure that they would meet those same standards that we have to comply to. And this move is also seen crucial for enhancing those cybersecurity and overall safety of the credit union systems and what the vendors or services that they're offered. That lack of this oversight has been described as an Achilles heel for most credit unions, right? So them actually coming in and helping forcing that will help us be stronger in our resiliency. We also don't necessarily have that preview to those fourth parties or beyond. So not only looking at some of those third parties, we're also trying to get the whole scope of all those services being offered underneath the umbrella to our members through those vendors. So we are definitely excited about that and look forward to what kind of authority or control we can now put on our vendors.
Yeah, that sounds like a very big step forward and a much needed one.
Yes, very much.
Absolutely.
Stephanie, I'm curious, as you look at the credit union security landscape and you talk to your peers, what are some of the top challenges that they're facing this year?
Yeah. Quite a few, right? It never changes. We always have a list that we are working through. Probably one of the biggest ones is the executive alignment and expectations, especially as those have increased over the internal scrutiny, presented by everything that's going on. So both executives and boards are asking more questions and are asking more of our security teams to get more done, protect us, but do it with less. As we look at, how the economy has been and budgets are shrinking and headcount is not expanding, we really need to make sure that alignment and expectations of the executives and also of the board and making sure what we are sharing can be met and that we can do it together. Aligning the security budget along with our risk tolerance. It's always hard to tell where our next threat's going to come from or where those gaps are going to be in our risk. So making sure we have the budget to support that risk tolerance is super important in a lot of CISOs' worlds right now.
Right.
Along with that is also staffing, security staffing and retention. We may get them, but then we may lose them for a better opportunity. And lots of folks are now saying, hey, we're going to come back in the office 2 days a week, or we're going to be doing this. And folks really have liked that remote work setting. So we really have to try to, juggle keeping them happy, but also bringing in more of that efficiency and collaboration and teamwork. And then probably lastly is just that complex and evolving threat environments. What we're fighting today is probably not what we're fighting tomorrow. It's what we didn't fight 1 year, 2 years ago. And it's probably not what we're going to be looking at, 6 months to a year from now. So being agile and being able to jump to all those different threats and make sure that we're responding in the correct way.
I liken the job of a CISO and a security team to coming to work every day and playing a game of whack-a-mole.
Yes.
What's happening today? What's happening? What do I do?
Yes. Who's the loudest?
Yeah. Yeah.
So true.
Well, Stephanie, I've had the pleasure of working with you on a couple occasions. And one of the things that I think that you've done really well is getting your executive team to understand some of the risks. Like you did a red teaming exercise, or sorry, a tabletop exercise on ransomware for your executives so they could understand, that was very proactive.
Yeah.
And I don't see everybody doing that kind of stuff, FYI.
Yeah.
So how have you been successful in translating cyber risk into more of a business conversation for your C-levels and the board that they can understand?
Yeah, love that question, right? And the journey hasn't been easy. There's been hits and misses along the way. But some of those things I found that have been successful, it's when you're communicating with those C-levels or those shareholders, you have to speak equal parts of security and bottom line. When CISOs are breaking down a threat, they have to be prepared to show that deeper target, but giving those folks a grasp of what ongoing remediations and cost are. You can't leave them in the dark, especially when you're fighting through incidents or other types of breaches.
Right.
I think, as Gardner said, by 2025, 40% of boards have a dedicated cybersecurity committee with oversight from qualified board members. But fewer than 10% of boards today actually have that cyber-specific community in it.
Yeah.
So how do you change your language? How do you communicate that you're getting across to all of your board members or all of your C-levels? You really have to read how they retain that information. Is it better in a PowerPoint? Is it better in a one-on-one? Is it better to send them just articles so they can digest it on their own? You really have to understand that audience and making sure that you're speaking that language so they don't necessarily get caught up in the not important details, but more the important things that you're getting across.
Jo and I have talked about this a lot in terms of the dearth of any kind of cyber expertise or knowledge on boards today and how big of a problem that is. And so it's great to see that beginning to change to a certain degree. But one of the things that I've also, some of the guidance that I've also heard when we're having these conversations is directed to the CIO and the CISO and security teams. Like they need to learn to speak business speak, not security speak, and be able to, we're not talking just about cyber threats. We're talking about business continuity. We're talking about resiliency. We're talking about risk mitigation. We're talking about, again, it's business speak and learning to be able to sort of level up the way that you communicate with people who don't have that deep expertise is really an important part of this equation, I think.
Yeah, no, perfect point. And as said, I've done everything. I've gone in and just been sorry, my lights just went out. I've gone in and been very technical. And then I've gone in and been, you asked the questions and let me give you the answers. I was reading an article the other day and they said, CISOs try this approach. Walk in using the 3 Ps: prediction, prevention, and proaction, and see if they're able to analyze through that. So I haven't tried that, but I thought that made sense. From a prediction, I can tell you, here's what I'm predicting to happen, or here's what's not going to happen. Then prevention, how do we deal with it? But then also proaction. That's not a word we hear a lot. It's more of acting after the fact or going to the biggest fire. But if we can start to show them this is a proaction attempt, maybe they'll start to see the outcomes and what we're really trying to prevent. So I'll let you know if that one works.
Oh, I like that. You have to tell me. That's good.
Yes, the 3 Ps. I like it. Tell me again what those 3 Ps were. Prediction,
prevention, and proaction.
Okay. That's good.
Okay. Well, we'll wait to hear from you how that is working for you. So I know that your organization has increased the size of your security team over the past couple of years, and that you've also engaged in some efforts to upskill and cross-train your teams. And as we talked about here a few minutes ago, as we opened the show, it's not unusual for credit unions, typically smaller organizations, right? And this is not true only of credit unions, but there are a lot of small to mid-sized organizations out there. But many organizations are and have been for years now feeling the pinch of a cyber skills challenge. So when you're talking with other CISOs in the credit union space, what advice do you share with them, or would you share with them on this topic? How the efforts that you've made have paid off for you. And I'd just love a little bit of a deeper dive there.
Yeah, for sure. And, I get that question a lot. Being in a credit union, we're lucky to have 15 people on our cybersecurity team. That's pretty large.
That's pretty
for
big.
A credit union size, right?
Yeah.
We own resiliency, we own access, we own incident response, but we also own cyber. And really, I give them quite a few things. Start thinking differently. Stop what you're doing. If you think back 10, 20 years ago, cybersecurity was a job of 2 engineers in a server closet, right? And for days they were just in there typing away, setting up their security. We're no longer that. We're much more expanded into the business and all of the things that the organization is doing. And, to launch billions of attack each day, cyber criminals employ the most cutting edge technology, including AI and machine learning. Yeah. And now how do we do that in fighting fire with fire? Many cybersecurity leaders have increased their own resiliency or reliance just by being able to look at AI and bring in some of that machine learning. And that one's hard to grasp for folks because we don't want to let go of things. We feel we have to monitor and have an eye on everything to protect the castle. But looking back and saying, if I can put AI to look at this, or if I can have machine learning monitor this and just notify me of alerts, it saves you time. It lets you look more strategically. It lets you look at that bigger picture. And of course, we're always going to need the humans in today's surface attack, but there definitely is a need for some of that specialized talent in what we're looking to do, right?
Yeah. Some of the research that we've done and some of the data that I've seen on the AI front, the Gen AI front, is that in many instances, it is more senior level executives who are experimenting, playing around with AI and who can kind of understand the benefits, and not as many, mid-level and lower level folks within an organization. And it could also have something to do with time, right? How much time do we have to come to work and, fool around and experiment. But I will say that with my own, my husband's in sales for a Fortune 100 organization. And one day I was doing something, I was using Claude, and I was doing something that I thought, you know what, I need to show him this. And he was officing across the house. And, I said, hey, got a minute, come in here, let me show you something. And I asked him, I said, are you using AI in your organization? And he said, yeah, I'm on a sales team, I'm on the road 90% of the time. I'm sure that people within our organization are. It doesn't touch me or my job.
Yeah.
Today anyway. And I said, let me show you
how
I'm using AI. And he was like, and I'm like, dude, it's going to take 2 minutes. And so I show him something and he was just completely gobsmacked. But that's my point. Sometimes it is, we don't know what we don't know until we know. That's my favorite dad line. And so sometimes it's a matter of just showing that. And, and the other thing, Jo and I talk about this all the time, is that, the reality of cybersecurity as it relates to AI is that the reason that threat actors do what they do is very simple: financial benefit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They want data. They want personally identifiable information. They want information that they can leverage. Okay. And often in exchange for money.
Yes.
And so it only makes sense as the rest of the world is experimenting with and learning how to use AI and Gen AI in day-to-day operations. Well, they're even more motivated to do that successfully than we are, because the quicker they get their arms around this, the more money they can potentially make. And AI is helping them launch more sophisticated phishing and smishing schemes and ransomware attacks and all that sort of thing. So really trying to communicate that has been something that Jo and I have been very passionate about. But I think that's the reality check on the whole AI part of the equation. We can't not rely on AI as part of our security operations, because the only way to combat that threat, that outside threat, is to be using some of the same tools and technology that they are.
Exactly. Right. One step ahead of them for sure.
Absolutely.
And just as you said, let's roll it out. Of course, there's guardrails, and security and rules around it. We can sign you up for acceptable uses, but know that this can make your job easier in a lot of ways. And it's across the board.
Yeah.
Another way is encouraging our current employees to seek out learning opportunities and upskilling them. So encourage them to go for certifications or other trainings that they desire to grow in your role, because what I've learned is you can't box them in. There's so much that's coming and ever changing in the security realm. So them having the desire to go learn and do things only brings it back to better for the whole organization. They're excited about it. They've learned something new, and they can really get amped up and want to dive into that versus you're going to have to go to this training whether you like it or not. I've seen that work very well.
Well, and I think that the reality of it is, and I know all three of us know this, but the reality of it is the more proficient we get with these new skill sets, the more interesting and rewarding our roles within organizations are, the more opportunities can come our way. And I say that as, as an analyst and as somebody who's deeply immersed in this space, and as somebody who's also, heard many, many conversations from employees being fearful of technology replacing them or replacing their jobs or whatever. And the reality of it is there are two things in play here. One, technology is in some instances going to replace parts of jobs. The good news is that should free up the rest of it, that should free up people to be able to do things that deliver greater business value, that allow them to work alongside the technology and guide and do the critical thinking and all that kind of thing. And I would much rather do that than, mindless data entry. So it is kind of teaching about that opportunity and getting people excited about kind of expanding their career and being able to do more. But I think too, I say this because I have twin 18-year-olds who just are starting their freshman year of college. And we've had many conversations about careers. And one of the things that I've told them is like, your soft skill capabilities, your critical thinking capabilities, your understanding that today's business landscape and the business landscape that will exist in 4 or 5 years when you graduate college is all about understanding how continuous learning is so important. You're not done. You're never done. So embracing the mindset of always wanting to learn more and be hungry for more information and more skills, and being adaptable and being able to pivot quickly and welcoming change, which we are not inherently good at. But those are the kind of things, in my opinion, that really serve all of us well, regardless of whether you're an old broad like me or you're a 24-year-old just starting in the workplace.
And you're exactly right. And, that leads me to the last point that I discuss when folks are having trouble with shortages. I say, look at schools, look at service members who are just coming out into the workforce. Veterans are coming back with so much skill set that's around cybersecurity that they are great for it. And because of COVID, now geographically diverse, we can go anywhere for some of these positions, right? And we have to be able to look outside the box. And it's no longer, setting in a cube 9 to 5. It's looking for those specific set of skills and do they fit with the company culture? And the rest we can figure out.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that you mentioned vets, because that's near and dear, to me as a vet. And people forget, hey, these are people that are great employees because they've got all these skills that not only technical skills, but they're going to show up to work. They're going to, they're going to be just good employees. So thanks for mentioning vets.
Well, and you have such great training in stressful situations, right?
Yeah.
an incident, it can be a very stressful situation.
Oh, absolutely.
To have
Absolutely.
someone that's very calm versus someone's like, I have no idea, I'm out of here. I
Right.
mean,
Mhm.
that all day long.
I think you
That's a
can
really good
tell,
point.
you can absolutely get a true measure of the mettle of a person, and that is METTLE, of a person watching them navigate a crisis.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Oh,
because
yeah.
some people can do that and do it well, and other people are just a chaotic mess, and
Yeah.
so it can be challenging. Well, okay, so on the diversity front. And speaking, I just referred to myself as an old broad, which is true. And, so here we are, three women in midlife in very senior level roles in an industry that is largely dominated by men.
Mhm.
And so I want to talk a little bit about, and let me back up and say, Jo and I are as passionate about supporting women in the technology
Mhm.
space in general, and in the cyberspace in particular, as we are about supporting vets. And so this conversation is coming full circle for us. But women only represent about 12% of the cyber workforce. I know that you've hired and mentored women in the space. Jo and I have spent our whole careers hiring and mentoring and creating opportunities for women as well. We would love your thoughts on why CISOs and senior leaders should double down on finding and attracting talented women in the field to their teams and organizations. Why?
The female CISO is so powerful, right? And watching it unfold in front of me in other CISOs, not only in the financial world, but the others that I've walked and worked in, they bring so much. It's their leadership and vision. They can inspire and guide their teams effectively. And I'm not saying that men can, but you can see it happening in front of you. And they can pick up those that are kind of sluggish and maybe not so much on the team, and guide and have those interactions with them to really make them feel part of that team and wanted and shared. Communication skills, female CISOs excel in articulating complex security concepts to non-technical stakeholders and fostering a culture of that security awareness. It's much easier to sometimes go have that conversation with someone that's going to be very calm and culturing, especially if you're talking about something like, hey, I just clicked on something that I'm not sure I wanted to, or hey, this looks a little suspicious. There's a little bit more ease in going through that when you feel someone is on the other end is empathetic, right?
Yeah.
And easy to talk to. We're very adaptable and we're resilient. It just comes in the females that we are. And, security landscape is constantly changing. And we have to be adaptable and resilient. And we're able to do that. And we can navigate pretty quickly. And we can respond to those threats and challenges.
Yeah.
And it's the collaboration and teamwork, just as I said. We build strong relationships because we want to not only build, but we want them to feel like they're part of it. And they are a strong part of what we need to be successful.
Yeah.
We're good at problem solving,
Well, and I look at it and I think that, and men are fantastic, but we're wired very differently, men and women. And, we bring nurturing, we bring the ability to multitask probably better than most men do, simply by virtue of the fact that many of us are working wives and moms and navigating all kinds of things, leading teams, building and growing companies, all of that sort of thing. And what's for dinner,
That's right. And your laundry's done,
Right? Oh, let me go between this call and the next call. I'm going to go throw a load of laundry in because the laundry operation can never stop, and so we're nurturing, we're collaborative by nature, we're communicative, we're teachers in many instances. And I think that, I have always described myself and that one of my superpowers is that I can function well in a high state of chaos. And I think that many women in CISO roles and in leadership positions are similar. And I think the last thing that I always look for, that I think is just an important thing that women bring to the table, is that we are exceptionally detail oriented. And when I compare sometimes the performance of my male teams and my female teams, it's just, women understand that the devil is in the details, and that
Yes.
quick and sloppy is not always good enough. And I've had colleagues that I've worked with that I adore over the years, for whom quick and sloppy, down and dirty is fine. And I think there's a happy medium in there. So I think that there are, diverse teams do better work. We produce better outcomes. And, but it does seem that, based on the lack of traction that we have on this front, and the fact that we've got, a penetration of 12% in the cyber industry, this does remain a significant challenge. And my hope is that conversations like this and insights like this will ultimately help organizations work harder to add women to their cyber teams. I mean, there's no downside.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And the one I struggled with mostly is women are more empathetic and emotional, and they have emotional intelligence. I can't tell you the number of times I apologize because I thought I was getting emotional in a conversation, or I would just apologize, right? It finally took me to say, quit saying you're sorry, because you're bringing something to this conversation no one else is. And we need to be empathetic. We need to show emotion and have that intelligence behind it, because we have to work through that. They need that, to be able to get to the other side. So it took me a while to think, don't go in and apologize. If you get frustrated, don't apologize, because it's all part of us getting through to the other side. It's part of our problem solving. It's part of our creativity. It really is who we are, and it's just part of it. And, thank goodness my boss has always said, I appreciate that, right? Because I don't get that perspective from necessarily my male managers and above. So, it's great that now it's starting to be accepted, and we're allowed to be that way.
I cannot tell you how many times I have had to, lecture myself on, don't apologize.
Right.
Don't use the word just ever, unless you're talking about justice. I'm just writing to check on, I was just wondering, what I'm saying, like things like that. And I've also had moments in my career where I started my first company when I was 34. And I've had many moments in my career where I was putting together a proposal, I was having a conversation, and I literally had to step back and say to myself, okay, what would a guy do? Because that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes you need that from a negotiating standpoint or whatever, but it is funny how you have to train your brain not to do certain things. Jo, I know you've experienced this.
Oh, yeah. But, I was thinking about something else. I had a last question for you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to meet most of your team. And one of the things that I found interesting about the people that you hired is their various backgrounds.
Yeah.
So you take chances.
Mm-hmm.
You bring in people from other domains, which I think is how you solve sort of the shortage problem, right? I've seen you take people in from other domains and go, they're smart. I've worked with them before. I know that they can learn this. So, and I don't always see your male counterparts do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what advice would you share about just kind of, nurturing that talent from other parts of the organization?
You hit it on the head on the nail with, you have to give them a chance. You have to invest in them, right? Mm-hmm. If they're coming to you and they feel that they're for that role and they have that desire, 9 out of the 10 times it's going to work. Right? Because they want to do good for you as much as you want them to do good for the company. And it really is that mentoring them and helping them through those things that maybe others wouldn't see that have come up in the ranks through those other fields. And it's just believing in each other. We work in high trust situations. We may have to all jump on a call at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning to, Monday at 6 p.m. And having that team and that camaraderie, cannot speak today, ladies. It's a perfect day to do this. It's essential, right? They all have to feel value. They have to feel part of it. And it's so important to keep it fresh and to keep new thoughts and new ideas. You have to be that devil's advocate. You have to be that supporter. You have to be everything they need you to be to see that world.
Yeah.
And it's great to sit back and watch, because so many people have gone through the ranks, and you look on LinkedIn and now they're their own CSO, or they're filling some other completely different role, and they'll tell you, I did that because you believed in me. You gave me that chance and I shined, right? And there were times where I wish people would have done that for me. And there are times when people did that for me. And when you feel both sides of that, you truly appreciate it and you want to share that with others.
Yeah, and there's nothing more rewarding. I mean, I've had the same path. I've had people who've done that for me, and I've done that for many, many people who've worked for me over the years. And it is such a wonderful, rewarding feeling to know that you've really kind of changed the trajectory of somebody's career. And I think that, you know, especially when it comes to other women, you know, reaching out that hand, helping somebody up, that's how we make our path forward. And a lot of times it is that collection of female leaders and friends that we have and things like that. And not that, I mean, some of my earliest mentors were great and very successful men.
Yes.
And nothing against male mentors at all, but sometimes as a woman, I just feel most times I feel such a responsibility to be the person who can extend that hand, who can help somebody along, who can give somebody, who can be confident in somebody's ability to shine in a new role with new responsibilities. And it's just so wonderful and rewarding to see that, you know, when you knew that they could do it and you see them and how happy they are, it's so rewarding.
Yep.
I love it.
I totally agree. And I'm not going to lie. If I see an employee in another department that I don't feel is being valued or they have interest and they just can't make that move, I'm going to go over and poach them. Right.
Yeah.
So it's been known. Right. Watch out. Don't let Stephanie talk to your team, but I'm here to tell you, if I see
She's a poacher,
I'm crossing the fence.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, Stephanie Southard, VP and CSO of BCU, I knew this was going to be an amazing conversation, and you've shared so much advice and insights, and we so appreciate that. And, you know, Jo and I knew this was going to be a fabulous conversation, and you have totally hit it out of the park. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed the conversation, and we will look forward to having you back again and to talk about some more interesting things in this space pretty soon, because you've been awesome.
Well, thank you for having me, and absolutely glad to chat with you ladies anytime. Lots to talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Security Square. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, Principal Analyst here at Kramer&Co. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hit that subscribe button if you've not yet done it, and we'll see you here next time.